Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the launch event for You Will Remember Me. Although we are connected virtually, before we get started, we would like to acknowledge that our meeting is hosted on Indigenous land and Dish with One Spoon territory. This is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. HarperCollins Canada gratefully acknowledges these Indigenous nations for their guardianship of this land. My name is Emily Ohanjanians, and I have the great pleasure of working with Hannah McKinnon, Hannah Mary McKinnon, as her editor here at Mira Books under Harlequin and HarperCollins. As one of the first readers and biggest fans of You Will Remember Me, I must admit I was hooked from the very first page. A man wakes up on the beach with nothing on him but swim trunks and a gash on his head. He doesn't remember how he got there, where he came from, or even his own name. As he trails his origins back to a small town in Maine, he discovers he left home 2 years ago without a trace after 2 of his ex-girlfriends disappeared. Could he be a murderer? Does he want to know? We certainly do. With twists and turns that reveal the sinister truth beneath the surface, this gripping amnesia thriller is as terrifying as it is terrific, and I hope you'll love it as much as I do. I'm going to turn it over to Agent Carolyn Forde, who will first tell you all about the dream team who are going to be running this wonderful show.
Thanks, Emily. Yes, my name's Carolyn Forde, and I'm an agent at Transatlantic Agency, and I have the great pleasure of representing Hannah Mary McKinnon. And I'm just so pleased to be here to introduce our illustrious authors who will be in conversation tonight. First, we have Hank Phillippi Ryan, who is the USA Today bestselling author of 13 novels of suspense. She has also won multiple prestigious awards for her crime fiction, including the 5 Agathas, 4 Anthonys, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She's also the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH TV and has won 37 Emmys, 14 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and dozens of other honors for her groundbreaking journalism. National book reviews have called Hank a master at crafting suspenseful mysteries and a superb and gifted storyteller. Hank's novels have been named Best Thrillers of the Year by Library Journal, New York Post, BookBub, Pop Sugar, Real Simple Magazine, and others. Her 2019 book is the acclaimed legal thriller, The Murder List, which won the Anthony Award for Best Novel of the Year. Her newest book is The First to Lie, a chilling psychological standalone. It garnered a starred review from Publishers Weekly and is now nominated for the Anthony Award for Best Novel and the iconic Mary Higgins Clark Award. And watch for Her Perfect Life, Hank's newest novel coming in September. And last but not least, our reason for being here tonight, Hannah Mary McKinnon, who was born in the UK and grew up in Switzerland and moved to Canada in 2010. After a successful career in recruitment, she quit the corporate world in favor of writing. While her debut, Time After Time, was a rom-com, she transitioned to the dark side thereafter. Her suspense novels include The Neighbors, the bestsellers Her Secret Son and Sister Dear, and now launching tonight, the much buzzed about You Will Remember Me. Hannah Mary McKinnon lives in Oakville, Ontario with her husband and her 3 sons. And speaking as Hannah's agent, I'd just like to say that Hannah is a talented, hardworking author and is wonderfully supportive to others in the writing community, which is why it's especially nice to be here tonight in support of her and her fantastic new thriller, You Will Remember Me. I'm going to hand it over to Hank now and Hannah.
And here we are.
Hello.
How are you? How are you, darling Hannah?
I'm good. I'm good. Yes, I'm good. Thank you, Carolyn and Emily and Alice. That was a wonderful introduction. Such a thrill to be here. And thank you, Hank, for doing this round 2, pandemic launch number 2. Here we are.
It's so crazy. But I have to tell you that look at the comments, look at the chat. The chat is pouring in, and your agent is here, and your editor is here, and your publisher is here, and your friends are here. You have been going nonstop all day. Tell us about Pub Day for, this You Will Remember Me, this gorgeous, haunting book. And this is the day that we've all been waiting for so long. What's it like to be a fabulous best-selling author on Pub Day?
Well, I started my day by stewing 7 pounds of apples. Because
Only
even though,
Hannah, right? Only Hannah.
because even though it's pub day, the pears and apples were going off, so they needed to be done. And so that's the glam reality of life as an author. But after stewing the apples, which was a quick job, it's been incredible. The online community, because everything's online, of course, because we can't do in-person events because we're still in lockdown here in Ontario, has just been, I haven't been able to keep up. I just barely managed to keep up with Instagram stories. And there have been so many posts on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram posts as well. It's been crazy and lovely, and I'm just, my heart is full.
I understand that. And I keep looking over here. I know you're wondering what I'm looking at, you all. And this is, I'm looking at the comments pouring in from Samantha Downing is here, and Robin Harding is here, and Allison Hurd is here, and Anissa Armstrong is here, and Linda Rosen is here, and Barbara Abbott, and Sharon Person. I mean, you have such a following and such a group of author friends and reader friends. I understand that your heart is full, and I want you to look at this chat when you have time and see how many people are here. The idea that it's Pub Day, did you wake up this morning like Christmas morning?
I did. I woke up and I thought, it's Pub Day, because I mean we wait for this day from the idea of the book until the finished product and actual pub day. It can be even when we're on a book a year schedule, it's still quite a long time. And then all of a sudden you've got this big build up, the cover release, and then the arcs go out and feedback starts coming in. And I like to say in publishing, things move slowly until they don't. And then all of a sudden here we are, and it's incredible. And I'm so thrilled to see so many people tuning in. Thank you so much.
Tori Eldridge is here, and Tessa Weggert is here, and Helene Mario is here. I'm going to stop reading names because they're pouring in too fast even for me to keep up with them. We're going to talk about a lot of things this evening, I promise. But I know you've been talking about this all day, but one more time, tell us a little bit about You Will Remember Me and where the idea came from.
Mm-hmm. So it's an amnesia thriller that features 3 main characters. We'll call one of them the man from the beach, because we'll just leave it at that. So he wakes up on a beach, doesn't know who he is, where he is, how he got there. And then we have Lily, who's searching for her boyfriend Jack, who went missing after an evening swim. And lastly, we have, by no means least, we have Maya, who's also searching for someone. She's searching for her estranged stepbrother Ash, who disappeared from town 2 years prior, left a note and walked out, and she hasn't seen him or heard from him again. But the question is the man from the beach Jack, Ash, the estranged stepbrother, neither, or both?
You know what? Let's just go have everyone go buy this book right now. Just go right now. And not right now, as we play up this chapter, but pretty soon right now after this is over. Where did you get, a couple of questions about this, I can't resist. Where did you get the idea for this?
That was a real life story that I remembered, or that I read about, and I was really intrigued. A gentleman from Toronto went missing on a ski hill in Lake Placid. He just literally vanished. He disappeared, and people were looking for him and feared the worst, especially when nighttime came. They figured they hadn't found him. He might perish on the mountain. And for days they looked for him, no sign of him anywhere. And he turned up in Sacramento in his ski gear 6 days later. And apparently he'd got in a truck, he'd been given a lift across the country, no clue why he went to Sacramento. He had a credit card in his pocket, but no money, no ID, so getting a phone was tricky. And eventually he was able to call his wife and he was returned home safely and everything worked out okay. So he was suffering from amnesia, and they still don't know exactly why, what happened. Probably he could have slipped and hurt his head, a blunt force trauma on his head from falling over. But I remember thinking that was so fascinating, because if you have amnesia and you don't know who you are, that means you have to trust the people who are telling you who you are. But what if they're lying? What if they don't have your best interests at heart? And that was the little gem of an idea that turned into You Will Remember Me.
And of course, because it's a Hannah Mary McKinnon book, it's not going to have this wonderful happy ending as it did in real life. But Emily called it an amnesia thriller too. And I think that's fascinating, because amnesia is a complicated thing to write, because
yes.
you remember how to walk and talk, or what something is called. How did you sort of mine that? Okay, I'm going to say mine that minefield. How did you avoid the mines in that minefield? And how did you figure out what the rules for the man from the beach, what he would remember and what he wouldn't?
I did a ton of research into the different kinds of amnesia and learned about the three main ones. And I chose retrograde, which means that he couldn't remember his past. The nice thing about writing amnesia, if you choose to do so, is that every case is unique. So you have a certain amount of flexibility, as long as you respect retrograde. You can't remember the past, but how do things come back? How much comes back? When does it come back? Is it triggered by something they see or experience? That can vary greatly. So I disappeared down many a rabbit hole, reading all about famous amnesia cases. Agatha Christie, for example, who famously disappeared for a few weeks. And then it was really a case of what does he need to remember, and how can I write it? And there are different ways of tackling it. Ruth Ware, one of the greats, in her debut, A Dark, Dark Wood, she had a non-linear timeline. And I complicated things by not doing that. Generally, a non-linear timeline is more complicated to write. But with a main character with amnesia, it's almost easier, because you can have them in their normal environment, and then when in the chapters in the present where they have amnesia, but I didn't do that.
Well, I mean, Jess is saying this sounds like a definite must-read ASAP. But the thing, your readers are smart and they're expecting twists and turns, and you give them. But in amnesia, you have to be fair. You can't just keep something away from the reader just because it's easier for you. And that's what I thought was such a brilliant tour de force about this book, is that it's completely fair. You do not have any secrets for the sake of the story. It really is about the characters.
Yes, and I have to give Emily a great big shout out for that, because it was, for me, this book was the hardest to write, because I knew the character had amnesia, and I plot my books, and we've talked about this a lot, how I plot beforehand and you plot on the page as you're writing. And I knew this character inside out, and I knew all of his backstory, but he couldn't know his backstory. I couldn't tell him. He was not allowed to have a flashback or a memory or remember anything. And I had not anticipated how hard that would be to write, because when you have a point of view character, that's how you develop them. That's how you introduce them partially to the reader, with what has happened to them in the past, their experience.
Because readers, because characters have context, and we as authors use that context to move a character through the story. And so you, brilliant Hannah, pulled the writer rug out from under yourself by taking that away. What did you, but although the readers are very thrilled about it, what did you learn as a writer? I hope this isn't a hard question. What did you learn as a writer from that?
Probably that I won't write another point of view character with amnesia again. I think that's author achievement unlocked. Thank you very much. And I not for a while. I probably won't. Although now I have more experience, so I would hope it will be easier. That was the main thing, that you can plot as much as you want, but in that kind of a storyline, it's difficult if you put yourself in a situation, you're trying to write a character in a situation that you know nothing about, that you've not experienced, and just the whole memory, not just the technical aspects of how amnesia works, but how that would feel as the point of view character, not just basically having nothing in your head other where your memory should be. That was the main lesson, that yeah, maybe I should have thought it through a little bit more.
Well, we're glad you didn't, because it is fascinating. You know, I love Sister Dear, and you know what we should say really quickly, and I know that Alice is going to put this up at some point if she hasn't already and I missed it, but there is a giveaway tonight. There is a fabulous giveaway that's going to be your backlist, not You Will Remember Me, because we brazenly want you to go out and buy this book right now. No pressure. It's just Hannah's career, you all. But we are giving away, Harper is wonderfully giving away your backlist to one lucky commenter. So don't be shy. Make sure you put a comment or a question in the chat, and Alice will draw one of the names, choose one of your names at the end to get Hannah's backlist, and that is very exciting. So I was talking about Sister Dear, and I didn't know how you could outdo yourself in Sister Dear. As Jen Jumpa is saying, you seem like such a nice person. But where do you come up with these really dark, twisted, if I may say, and unexpected plots? Do you surprise yourself?
Yes, I think so, because you know, I like to think of myself as a nice person, a kind person. I certainly try to be. You know, if I died tonight, I would hope that people would remember me. Ha ha ha! You will remember me, ho ho, as a kind person. So being able to explore the darker side of a character, because we all have dark thoughts sometimes, and I'd never act on them, obviously, but being able to explore the dark side, being able to be a rule breaker, which I am not naturally. I'm a total nerd, I really am. But being able to push these characters and also myself, it's almost like a game of chicken with myself. Sister Dear was pretty dark. Let's see if we can kick it up a notch. You know, it's how far will I push those boundaries? How bad can my characters be? And when I outlined You Will Remember Me, I sent it to Emily, and I had 3 endings in mind. And I remember asking her, how dark can I go? And she said, as dark as you want, because we can always rein it in. And so we did.
It's fantastic. It's amazing. I was, first of all, quick thing, it's your thriller backlist, not everything you ever wrote in your entire life since you were 12. But
yeah, not my grade 6 essays, no.
Just a thriller backlist. And I was going to say to you, I was going to ask you, when you're relating this dark side of our beautiful Hannah, you know, what does your family think about this? And I'm seeing now in the chat someone called Robert McKay saying, some of us have to sleep with one eye open.
Oh, I wonder who said that. When I was writing You Will Remember Me, and I don't want to give anything away, but Rob and I, where I'm sitting now, we have desks facing one another, and I popped my head up over the screens, and I said, did you know, and don't try this at home, boys and girls, please. I said, did you know that if you give somebody too much Benadryl, it can really mess with their memory? And he just looked at me and he said, a fictional someone, right? I said, yes, of course. And later that evening, he was watching TV, and I went over and I said, I paused the telly and I said, someone's working under a car, you know, if it's jacked up or whatever, could it fall on them, and could the jack give way, and could they be crushed and die? And he said, well, yeah, depending on the jack. And I said, ooh, tell me more. And he just looked at me and he said, you worry me.
Do you remember the story you told about how you suggested that the killer wife get rid of the evidence in the
Yes.
Tell about that.
Yes, we were watching a movie based on Stephen King, and it was about a couple, and the guy was a serial killer, and his wife had just figured this out. And he comes home and they're having this big fight, and she manages to fling him off the banister, and he falls, and she thinks he's dead, and he's not. So she this is horrible. She suffocates him with a Ziploc bag. She holds it over his mouth because he's all broken and can't really fight back. So she suffocates him. And I said, quick. She's in the kitchen, she's washing the bag. I said, oh no, there's going to be blood evidence. There's going to be evidence in the sink. You've got to clean the sink. So she cleans the sink. And then I said, take the bag, quick, check his mouth that there's no bits of the plastic bag. She checked his mouth, no bits of the plastic bag. She takes them out. And then I said, quick, put the bag in the fridge, put some meat in it or something. So she gets, I think it was minced beef or whatever, put it in the bag and stored it in the fridge. And I could just see Rob turning his head very slowly and just, burning a couple of holes with his eyes in the side of my head. He was a little bit surprised.
That's hilarious. How do you know how to cover up the evidence of a deadly crime?
We spend a lot of time figuring out how to kill people and get away with it.
And all of you in the audience love this. You just, if you're making fun of Hannah, you love it. And that's why you're here too. So Christine is asking, is your husband a writer too?
No, he's not. No.
So he just enjoys it. He just enjoys your mind processes.
I think so, yes. And he loves the audiobooks. He listens to my books on audio and really enjoys them. Yeah.
That's interesting. So lots of people in the Q&A are asking the same question, which is pretty fascinating, which is, do you know the end of the book when you start writing? And I'll add, does it stay that way?
Depends on the book. So for the neighbors, no. For the neighbors, I had a more hopeful ending until I went to my, I guess it's becoming a bit of a trademark, what the heck just happened ending. My characters just went off in a different direction. In Her Secret Son, I had a couple of endings in mind, but I wasn't sure who to kill. So that was still kind of open after I'd finished plotting it. Sister Dear didn't change at all. A couple of things changed, but even before I started writing, even before I had the character's name, I knew who became Eleanor was at the beginning and end of the story, both emotionally and physically. That was odd. And in You Will Remember Me, we had the three endings, and once we'd chosen which one, that didn't change. In fact, I'd say the last third of the book really got stripped back to the studs because it was very convoluted and tricky, and Emily helped me with that so much. And I'd say the last chapter's probably out of the last third that barely changed at all. That was very
fascinating to hear how a writer's mind works and how a story evolves. And there's always this sort of moment for me when the book I'm writing sort of says to me, this is it. This is what I am now. This is what I'm supposed to be. And I think, oh, right. Thank you. Okay, I get this. I get this. It's a book about redemption or retribution or revenge. And it sort of blossoms into what it was meant to be. And it's really this moment as a writer that you just crave. Another moment as a writer that you just crave is when you come up with the tagline. And Hannah, to forget is to regret.
I take no credit.
Who thought of that, and how do you love that?
Emily, I joke now and say my next one, I'm just going to call it book 7 because I am notoriously rubbish at coming up with titles. I had a great title for You Will Remember Me. I thought I did. I had a great title for next year's book, or I thought I did. And no, Emily's suggestions are always way better, and she came up with the tagline and the back cover copy, which is brilliant too. Yeah, so
I can see Emily behind her black screen of her name. She's just blushing now.
Sure,
but she knows you feel that way. She knows you feel that way. Well, one of the things about to forget is to regret. We want to make sure tonight that there are things in your life that you don't forget. And I want the audience to think about what kinds of questions we might ask you about that. But I here have the bowl
Oh
of
boy.
possible memories in which there are many questions to ask you about what you remember. And I will pick at random.
All right,
You
I'm
all
ready.
in the audience, ask Hannah, put in the chat what things you might want to know if Hannah remembers, because some of these pieces of paper, I'll just look at this one, say audience. That's my handwriting. It's I can read it. It says audience. So if I pick one of those, I'm going to take one of your questions from the
Ooh,
audience.
this is fun.
Nothing too embarrassing here. Do you remember? I made notepads out of the discarded pages of my.
Oh, brilliant. Recycling.
Do you remember a class that changed your life in school or out of school?
Weirdly enough, when I did my bachelor's degree, we had to take history of art. And I can't draw, I can't paint, I don't get all of that. I'm not artistic in that way at all. And I went in, and it was compulsory. And I remember thinking, this is going to be such a waste of time. Why do I have to take this class? It's going to be rubbish. And I was enthralled, and I loved it. It was because the teacher told basically a story. So of course he had me right from the beginning when he started telling the story of how art evolved. It was absolutely fascinating. So that was really, really surprising. I did not expect that at all.
Those life-changing things sometimes happen when we least expect it.
Yes.
All right, let's see what happens here with audience. We got audience. Let's
Ooh.
see. Do you remember Carol Hild is saying, what food was served at your wedding? Oh, good one.
Yes, I remember it was duck. That was the main, and it wasn't very nice. It was a very small wedding. There were only about 15 or 16 of us, I think. But it wasn't great. But the chocolate mousse cake made up for it.
Okay, that always makes up for it. Okay, what was your first? Do you remember your first pet?
Yes, it was a guinea pig. Well, actually, it was a goldfish. But my first proper pet, I guess, huggable pet, was a guinea pig called it was called Fluffy. It was black and white and very squeaky.
That's so great. All right, here we go. Squeaky or fluffy?
Yeah, because they make that funny noise. They squeak.
We had hamsters, and this will date me, but they were named Chet and David after Chet Huntley and David Brinkley, the newscasters, but our cat ate them. So that's a whole nother story. All right. Here's a question. I know, sad. The first time you ever saw this book cover?
I have a ritual with book covers, which sounds completely silly and nerdy, but I do. So Emily will send me, and to Carolyn, she'll send us the file, PDF generally, and it'll come in an email that says, big news, got the cover, and I hover the mouse over the attachment and I close my eyes really tight, because that makes a difference if you close them really tight. And I double click, and then I wait a few seconds once I know the document's open, and then I open my eyes, and then I get my gut reaction to it. And I gasped when I saw the cover.
Wow. So this was quite, you hung up a little bit, you're a little bit frozen, but now you're not frozen. So
You were frozen too, so that's weird.
That's so nice. So this, and when you saw, this is haunting.
That's gorgeous.
It's so multi-layered and haunting. Amazing. And Tara Laskowski is here, Robin Harding is here, and Allison Hurd is here. Can't believe it. All right, let's do this one. The first time, do you remember the first time you saw your first book?
Yes. You mean physical copy book?
Physical copy of a book.
Yes, that was The Neighbours, and a box of advanced reader copies showed up on my doorstep. And I'm pretty sure I jumped up and down because I wasn't sure what was in the box. So maybe I hadn't read the label properly or something. And that was quite the experience to actually be able to hold my book. Yeah, it was amazing.
And PJ Vernon is here now, who I just got a great mention in the New York Times. Very
Yes.
fancy for
Read
Bathhouse.
Bathhouse, people. It blew my mind. It's absolutely amazing. Comes out in June.
Your first car.
My first car was a mini Metro that I bought off my sister. It was light blue, and she'd taken it to a camp, to a summer camp, and a young boy there had taken a hammer to it and had dented it everywhere. So I drove around in it, and it worked perfectly fine. It was just dented, and I bought it, I think, for $200.
A great car, then.
It was a great car. Yeah.
What color? What color was it?
Light blue. Yeah, and it was one of the old ones with a choke. You know, it didn't have a. It was.
Well, I don't know what a mini Metro is. I live in Boston.
A longer mini. Maybe that's an English car then. Well, it must be, I suppose.
Do you know what a mini Metro is? All of you in the audience, let me know if I'm the only one. Audience question. Okay, audience question. I'm just going to scroll and see. Tori Eldridge. Okay, do you remember the first time you met Emily, your editor?
I do, yes. And we'd spoken on the phone because my original editor, Michelle, who had acquired The Neighbours and Her Secret Son, and Sister Dear actually, left just when we'd finished the edits on Her Secret Son. But before, I'd written Sister Dear. So Michelle had acquired it, but Emily inherited it, and that made me really nervous because Emily hadn't acquired Sister Dear. And I remember being very nervous that I needed to really make an impression and hoped she would love it, which she did. And when I met her in person, the first thing I thought was, my goodness, she looks like Charlotte from Sex and the City.
Totally so. That relationship with your editor, you know, is such an amazing moment when you realize this is the person who's going to, ooh, that light is funny. This is the person who's going to make a difference in my life for a long time, you know, so it's wonderful that you got very lucky with that. Okay. First date. Do you remember your first?
Oh my gosh, oh gosh. I didn't really date I was a bit sad really. I didn't really date. I suppose it must have been when I was an au pair, working as an au pair in Geneva when I was about 17. And I met a young Italian man at a disco, because it was the 80s, people, okay? It was a disco. And then we went out on a date, and I think we went out for about 2.5 years in the end. Oh. Yeah.
Oh. An Italian guy in a disco?
Yeah. From Venice, yeah.
Cool. Venice?
That's really good dancer.
Tell us more. Tell us more. Jenna saying a mini Metro looks like an AMC Gremlin. Okay, got it. Thank you.
I'll take your word for it.
The first teacher who said you were wonderful.
Oh my gosh. Well, all of them. No, I have no idea. The first one?
Well, or some teacher that you remember who told you a thing that mattered to you, I guess, is what I was thinking about this. A life-changing pat on the head, or said that you were good at maths, or that you were a good writer, or that you had talent, or...
I remember when I was in England, when we moved from Switzerland back to England in the late 70s. So I would have been, I don't know, 8, 9, 10. And I had a teacher called Mrs. Waite, and she always, she was very keen on us doing creative writing. And I remember writing something, a ghost story or something, and she said it had lots of potential. I remember, and I felt very proud.
Oh, that's so nice. I mean, people are asking and have in the Q&A as well. Did you always want to be a writer? Did you think about that?
No, my career path was business. That was my dream. It was to be the big cheese of a company, to have it was, again, the 80s, very heavily influenced, the big shoulder pads and the big hair. And that was what I wanted. That was my career path. And I did that, and I was very successful. And it wasn't until we moved to Canada and my company that I started up here failed that I found myself at a crossroads to decide what I wanted to do. And so this is my second career. So if Rob is watching, he'll now have this recorded. If we had not made the decision to move to Canada and we'd stayed in Switzerland, and I'd stayed in that career of IT recruitment, maybe I wouldn't even be writing at all. So
it is interesting, those decisions that we make that we think we make for a certain reason, and then the dominoes just fall. I mean,
yes.
You know, there are 100 people here tonight as a result of you moving to Canada and that
Yes.
company failing or whatever, and
Yes.
you deciding to write has changed your life in ways that you never would have imagined.
Yes, we wouldn't have met, for example. Chances are,
I mean,
I probably would have read your books, but we would never have met.
No, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to think about. Okay, here we go. And Carla's saying, so glad it worked out for you. Carla Suto is saying, so glad it worked out for you.
Thank
Right.
you, Carla.
Amy is asking, oh, I better, well, wait. Okay. Oh, look at this. I found an audience one. Oh, look, audience. Amy Dillingham is saying, who was the first author you met that left you starstruck? Not counting Hank.
Not counting Hank.
Amy didn't say that. I just put that in.
That would have been at BoucherCon in 2017, so the year before The Neighbours came out, and it happened to be in Toronto. But the author who told me about BoucherCon is Lynn McPherson, who is a local Oakville author, and I met her at a local bookshop. She was there with her book, promoting her book, and we started chatting, and she said, are you going to BoucherCon? And I said, what is BoucherCon? And that led me to meet so many other authors. So it would have been Lynn.
It's just so funny when we think about how much we didn't know when we started.
Yes.
And how much we rely on mentors and authors with experience and new friends in this world to sort of guide us along the way. I remember when I first went to Crime Bake, the traditional mystery convention, and the guest of honor was Charlene Harris. And I had no idea who that was. And I remember saying to someone, who's Charlene Harris? And they're like, come over here and chat with me just for a minute before we go any farther in this event. Okay. Let's see here. What else? We have plenty of questions, Hannah.
Tons of questions. I should be nervous.
What was the first? Oh no, you know what? Somebody else asked this too. And let me see if I can find it real fast. So whoever said this in the audience, I know that that's here. The first book you loved as a kid.
Oh my goodness. My mum and dad used to read us the Mr. Men books. So they're the little, there's one behind me there somewhere.
Oh, Mr. Men, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the Mr. Men book, okay.
The Mr. Men books, they used to read those to us. But I think probably the book that I remember most vividly reading with my mum and my dad would be Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And that was just such, I mean, you know, you inherit or you receive or you win, I guess, an entire chocolate factory. And what, I mean, it's just, I love chocolate. I'm half Swiss, I can't help it. That book was really fun. And we read all the Roald Dahl ones, fantastic.
I mean, look at that. Look at you and look at Roald Dahl. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is gruesome. I mean, I love it. And I can tell you every word and sing every poem. But in reality, you know, people are blown up and exploded and turned purple and made into blueberries. And it's not really, but it's so funny.
Yes.
So dark and so much social commentary in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which seems to have imbued your own writing style because you are dark and mordantly funny.
Yeah. And he also wrote a book of short stories called A Twist in the Tale. And I remember that one vividly because, as the title would suggest, every tale had a twist at the end. And I remember reading those and being quite fascinated by the spin at the end, just pulling the rug out from underneath you. at the very end. I really.
And I think there is a thing that happens with young readers. If you read, the Saki stories, or the Shirley Jackson The Lottery, and when you realize that you've been thinking along the way that something is a certain way, and a clever author can say, look at it this way, it's completely different. And that's what you do. That's what you do in every one of your books. Do you plan those? I mean, are you thinking on one side of your brain as the author, and on the other side of the brain thinking how you want the reader to think what this is, and on the other side of your brain what you think it is?
I think when I sit down to outline and plot, I like to surprise myself. So I'm plotting as the author, but also looking at it hopefully as a reader might.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting question. I think I probably wear both hats and try and look at it from both sides, because as authors we read so much too, that I think it's important to consider how it will be received. And sometimes I worry about that, because I know that the endings in The Neighbours and Sicily and You Will Remember Me, a bit less Her Secret Son, but still a little, they're what we call maybe Marmite endings. Marmite is that horrible yeast spread that you get in England. You either love it or you hate it. That's when something's Marmite, you either love it or you hate it. So I know that my endings, they don't tie everything up neatly for everyone. It doesn't work out necessarily for everyone beautifully, the way it would in a rom-com potentially. But I like that as a reader. I enjoy that. So that's probably why I write them that way.
Yeah, exactly. And you can feel that it isn't going to be, you're not going to, at the end, your readers, your fans know that they're not going to say, well, so then that's all sorted and fine. They're going to say, are you kidding me? I never saw that coming. And that's what you hope for. And since you know that that's what people are hoping for, you have to be even more clever to not have it be the thing that they think it's going to be. So
because readers are smart. Readers are so smart. They see you coming from a mile away. So yeah, they're a smart bunch to try and fool, that's for sure.
Because that's why we love them so very much.
Yes.
And readers, remember that Harper is drawing for a prize of the backlist of Hannah's thrillers. So do leave a comment and do ask a question. Because we will draw the names at the end of the evening for the winner of the backlist of Hannah's books. And we are talking tonight about You Will Remember Me, Hannah Mary McKinnon's wonderful new thriller that came out today. This is her launch night party, You Will Remember Me. And we're talking about things that Hannah remembers. But Hannah, you do have about 50,000 questions here in the Q&A. Should we go through some of these questions?
Love to, yes.
It might be a little bit harder than the do you remember your first pet? But we can try them. I just saw Does Your Husband Sleep with One Eye Open?
Yeah.
And some of these you've answered. Do you know the ending before you start to write the book? Sherry Brown says, do you take a break from writing after each new book?
Not necessarily, no, because it's not like I write one and then wait and then write the next and then from A to Z and finish them all and move on. I'm always at a different stage of different projects. So for example, when I handed in You Will Remember Me to Emily in January last year, I then started thinking about the plot for the book for next year, so 2022. And when Emily sent me the developmental edits back for You Will Remember Me, I put the one for 2022 aside and worked on You Will Remember Me until I sent that back. And then, so we're always, and then I do a book, and then of course there was Sister Dear coming out, so there was promotion for that one. So no, generally I don't take a break.
No, I've known Hannah now for more than a year, for at least 162 episodes of First Chapter Fun. So however long that is. And I don't think we email each other at midnight. There's not much break stuff
Yeah, I had an epiphany, actually. I decided I'm not a workaholic. I just really like work.
Hannah, that's what workaholics say. That is the classic line. But we'll just go on to the next question. Kate Anslinger is asking, hi, Kate, and welcome.
Okay.
I'm a wonderful author. Do you ever struggle to come up with ideas? Ha, ha.
Yes,
It's
no.
a struggle.
Yes, definitely. Ideas that stick. I think just a oh, this will be interesting, but then it turns out to not have legs, or something that, oh, it's too similar to something I've read, or this is a really good idea. Oh no, look, someone's just launching a book that's exactly that idea, which is so frustrating. That happened to me recently. I thought of an idea and I thought it was brilliant, and then I read about a book that is coming out next year and I thought, oh dang it, it's exactly that. So
it's still brilliant. It's still brilliant. You just weren't the first person to, well, you weren't the first. Well, you know what? You were the first person to think of it for yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You thought of it just as much as the other person thought of it. Just just afterward. Okay. So Kimberly Muscle, hey Kimmer, is saying, do you remember when you first met Hank? And this is an interesting question.
So we met face to face in person at BoucherCon in Texas in
2019?
No. Yes. Yes, it would have been 2019. Yes. And there is, so anyone who has this picture, we need to see it, because there is, I remember there are a group of us, and we had a picture taken. But it was very brief. We only met each other for a few minutes. Well, you know, a drink or whatever. And then it was when First Chapter Fun started up. And since then now we're BFFs, aren't we?
We are, I think we are BPFFs, best pandemic friends forever, which I hope will be best post-pandemic friends forever.
Yes.
I would love to see that picture if anybody has it, because I will confess to you that I do not remember that at all. I do not remember that.
It was very brief.
I was the guest of honor at that BoucherCon, and I don't remember very much of that. Yeah. I have to admit. So we have to go to the next time and really really hang out. Zoom user is asking, is there another genre that you would want to write in?
I do have a middle grade book that I should dust off and write up to young adult, but I'll do that when I have time. Ho ho ho, which would be fun, I think. But I'm really happy in the genre that I'm writing in now. So for now, I don't have plans or any desire really to write in a different genre. I'm really content in crime fiction.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we get asked that question, and you write what you love. You write what you love to read, and so the idea of just going to another genre isn't how our brains are working.
Right. Yes.
We're happy with this, and that's the idea of sitting down. I mean, when you sit down at your computer to write, are you happy?
Depends on the stage of the book. When I'm writing my first draft, my skeleton draft that Emily will never see and Carolyn will never see because they're so awful. It needs layering and fleshing out. But when I write that, I'm generally happy because it's brand new and shiny. And then when I do my first, second, third pass, it's all still a bit of a spaghetti mess. So it's a bit of a chore, but then when things start coming together, it feels a lot better. And then when I get the developmental edits back from Emily, I'm always raring to go because I know it's going to be that much better. So most of the time I am, but it's a job. So yeah, there are some days where I think, oh no, I've got that scene to do. It's what I don't like is when I'm stuck. When I can't, when I've written something and there's a plot hole and I don't know how to solve it, then I need to walk away and go and do something else.
What do you do? Asking for a friend. What do you do when you get stuck?
I peel about 7 pounds of apples.
I mean, so you go to, but like you did today.
Oh, and do other stuff. Yeah,
You
go
do other-
out for a walk.
And
or-
why does that work, do you think?
I think it's because for me, certainly trying to force creativity feels odd. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will have my word count and I will get my butt in the chair, my fingers on the keyboard, and I will write and I will get it done. But if I'm stuck on something, either I need to skip ahead and write a scene or a chapter where I know what will happen and go and do that. Or if it's that I'm stuck on a, say, a plot hole that has really got me, or I'm thinking about ideas for the next book. And I've tried this, to sit down with a notepad and a pen. And I'm going to have an idea now. Well, you're not, are you? It doesn't work. But when you're doing, I think for me, when I'm doing something else, like peeling 7 pounds of apples or whatever it is, or baking, then my brain disconnects from trying to force creativity and just lets it do at its own pace when I'm working on something else. And sometimes I wake up the next morning and I have the solution. It's very odd. The brain's a weird.
Some people say that if you set your intention before you go to sleep, I need to figure out how X, Y, and Z. That it's not necessarily that in the morning you'll wake up with eureka, but your brain will have processed it overnight and sort of gotten ahead of where you might be if it hadn't. And it can't hurt.
No,
it can't hurt to think about it that way. It is kind of the magic of writing, isn't it? That ideas burble up from a place that we don't know what there will be. And there has to be you have to have the confidence, though, as you do, to sit at your desk and write a story that you understand that Emily will work with you on, that will not be exactly what it is when you write those first words, but just putting those words on the page is a real tightrope, and writers are so insecure on one side, but then so self-confident on the other side, right? Because we're going to write a book, for goodness sake. How hard is that?
It's true. It is. It's completely true. And I always say you can't edit a blank page. So if I don't put words on the page, I know if I don't sit down and put my fingers on the keyboard, the words will not appear as if by magic. So it's part of the job, and sometimes it's really frustrating.
Dennis Lehane used to talk about how he thought about his book so much that when he got home, he was surprised that more of it wasn't written. Right.
That's familiar.
But you have to do it. You have to do it. I've got to ask you this question. Sharon Person is asking the hardest question on the planet.
Go
and
on.
It is, do you remember your first phone number?
Oh, my first phone number? No, I haven't got a clue. When we moved to Canada, it was the 19th time I'd moved. So no.
Why? Why? The 19th time?
Yeah, 19, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't possibly remember your
Not
phone.
a clue.
Mine was Uptown 3 2768. Uptown 3 2768. We had letters, and that is how old I am. At least it wasn't like 4371 or 2. My number was 2. I'm so old.
Or operator.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just gonna Zoom user. I wish I knew who this was. Oh, let me do this. Hank or Hannah, is there a certain, from Lynn Mercado? Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Is there a certain place in your home where you like to read?
Where I like to read, yes, in bed. In bed at the end of the
Can't wait
day.
long enough, though.
Yeah, or in the living room by the fireplace in the summer, or in the winter, or now outside in the garden, because it's lovely and warm.
And I saw your pool. Do you actually go in your pool in your backyard?
Well, not with my books, but
Yes, there was some author that says she likes to read in the pool, standing by the side of the pool with a book on the ledge. I think it was Lisa Scatolini who says she reads like that. I'm sorry, Lisa, if you're out there and that's not true, but that's my memory. that you
Well,
read.
we do have a big inflatable pizza wedge that I could sit with a book, but I burn so fast in the sun. I'd end up looking like a tomato. It would be completely ridiculous. So best not.
Best not. Zoom user is asking, who are some of the writers who have, oh, it's Stephanie. She's saying, not sure why I'm showing as Zoom user, my name is Stephanie. Who are some of the writers who inspired you?
So Lisa Jewell, definitely, David Nichols as well. I'm so glad Samantha Downing's watching, because she probably has no idea, but she will now. I love her work. I loved My Lovely Wife. He started it, For Your Own Good, that's publishing soon. And her books are so twisted, and she's so bold and fearless in her writing. And sometimes when I'm writing something, I'll think, what would Samantha do?
Oh, I love that.
You
We
know,
need t-shirts. What would they say? What
would Samantha do? So it's almost like it's okay. So she's got a bit darker here. I'm going to go a bit darker. So it's almost like I don't know. She just inspires me to write darker characters. So,
and For Your Own Good, a shout out to For Your Own Good tonight, really, because that is an intensely, hilariously, darkly wonderful book, For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. And so many books tonight. We can't even name them all, but we are here tonight for You Will Remember Me. And I'd love to call back Carolyn and Emily and Alice to have a little final closing of tonight's event. You all have been so incredible. And Hannah, you have been such a good sport in answering all the wonderful. Next year, I'll save this bowl.
And, you know all my secrets now.
So let me now, while you're all here and before we close, propose a toast. To our darling Hannah, who is the best friend ever and the best writer in the universe, who has changed all of our lives, and finally in this pandemic has given us all something to celebrate. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And long may you write.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, Hannah.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. And people, this is time to look at your comments, Hannah. Look and see how many, I saved them while we were talking. Look at all the cheers and hip hoorays. Thank you so much for all of you for being here tonight. I've had a wonderful time, and I'm so pleased to be able to celebrate this with all of you. Alice, I will send it back to you for good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Hank.
Good night.
Hannah, love you.
Me too.